My name is Dr. Joseph Nicolosi. I'm a clinical psychologist. I am the founder of reparative therapy.
What do you mean by reparative therapy?
Gays have taken that term, reparative therapy. Oh, you're trying to repair us. You think we need fixing, like you're trying to repair a car. No, what we're trying to say is that that homosexual behavior is an attempt to repair yourself. You're trying to make the masculine connection. You're trying to make that gendered-based connection that you did not get in your childhood, and that it's not working. That's why you're coming to us, because the effort to repair yourself through homosexual activity is not working. There is still not a credible child developmental model that can explain homosexuality unless you traumatize the child first. If you don't traumatize a child, he will be heterosexual. If you traumatize him in a particular way that has to do with his sense of gender, then you create the homosexual condition.
Now, does that mean that every client that comes to you, if he's going to receive help, has to recognize exactly what the traumas were?
The client doesn't have to do anything. All he has to do is show up at a certain time, leave at a certain time, and pay his bill. Okay? Everything else he does is up to him. If you ask a homosexual, what is it that you're attracted to in another man? He's going to describe qualities, personality, and physical features that he wishes he had. So he's trying to repair his deficits. Reparative therapy does only three things. It asks questions. It inquires. What are you doing? What are you looking for? What's motivating you? Number one. Number two, it offers interpretation. And the client doesn't have to accept the interpretation. But the therapist might say something like, you know, last week you said to me that you are repulsed by the female body. I remember 2 sessions before that, you said you slept in the same bed with your mother until you were 14. I wonder if there's a connection. That's called offering an interpretation. That's what we do. So we ask questions, we offer interpretations, and the third thing we do is we educate. We provide accurate scientific information for the client's information.
Can you say something about the relationship between the client and the therapist?
It's a relationship built on trust. We talk about the therapeutic alliance. The therapeutic alliance, and this is the definition of reparative therapy, based upon the therapeutic alliance. The therapeutic alliance is defined as the client and the therapist coming together, agreeing to work together on some goals and objectives, and here's the punchline, as defined by the client. So the client is telling you what he wants, and the therapist says, fine, I will join you toward the acquisition, toward the achievement of your goals and desires.
Now, the criticism appears to me to be that therapists engaging in this kind of therapy have a predetermined goal, and therefore this is being imposed on the client.
We actually have clients who come in gay identified, they leave gay identified, and they experience benefit from therapy. So we do not force people to change. How can we possibly force people to change?
But for some therapists, presumably, it would be controversial to accept a client who doesn't want to be there. So these clients who are coming in brought by their parents, how do you reconcile that in terms of a viable therapeutic relationship?
No therapeutic relationship can be established if the client doesn't want to be there. So if the client comes in and says, my parents dragged me in here to change, but I don't want to change, a therapist has to find some basis for the two of them to work together. So the therapist may say, okay, fine, you don't want to change, but would you be interested in exploring why you're homosexual? Where does this come from, even though you want to change it? And some clients will say yes. Whatever you want to talk about, those will be the therapeutic goals. We need never touch on homosexuality.
So it's primarily talking therapy, or are there other approaches that
we have other
use?
approaches, yeah. We have other approaches other than just talking therapy. We have body work, which is a faster way of doing work. The client will recall a particular memory or an incident, and we ask them, we talk about the triangle of containment. Another modality that we use is EMDR. EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It's used for past trauma, and since we know that homosexuality is based in trauma, emotional abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. EMDR is most effective for addressing the early trauma. So those are basically the modalities that we use. The reparative drive is basically the person trying to repair themselves. And like I say, the homosexual is trying to repair what's missing within himself through sexual contact. Okay? But this notion of reparative drive theory or the reparative therapy has a long history. It goes way back into the 1920s, 1930s. The whole history of psychoanalytic study on homosexuality always repeats this theme that the homosexual is trying to recapture his lost masculinity through sexual activity.
So what was the contribution of Elizabeth Moberly?
I started becoming interested in the reparative concept based on Elizabeth Moberly. She wrote a little book, a 53-page book called Homosexuality, a New Christian Ethic. It was a very small book. Elizabeth Moberly said that the homosexual is defensively detached from other men emotionally and is trying to make up for it through sexual contact. Well, she got it from John Bowlby's attachment theory. John Bowlby called it detached defensiveness, and she called it defensive detachment. But see, that took reparative therapy into the whole literature of attachment. And the therapeutic relationship is an attempt to establish that attachment with the male therapist.
Why is there such criticism against you and reparative therapy?
There's such criticism because the greatest threat to the gay agenda is when one man stands up and says, I was once homosexual and I'm no longer homosexual. That's a major threat to the gay agenda. Why? Because fundamental to the gay agenda is you're born gay. It's essential because many studies show, many public opinion studies show that if you can convince average people that the person is born gay and cannot change, you're much more likely to develop an attitude of tolerance. The gay lie is the idea of two men living together in a loving sexual relationship. It doesn't work that way. If they become bonding man to man, they lose interest in themselves sexually. They always have to maintain a mysterious element. That's why there's a lot of anonymous sexual contact. That's why there's always a pursuit of the new stranger, because the mystique of who this person is allows you to project onto him. That's why even gay men who are in relationship long term will go out and have anonymous sexual contacts to keep their interests, sexual interests going.
I'm interested in the fact that there seems to be an attempt to define all therapeutic activity in this area as reparative therapy.
Many different modalities, and I don't even know them all. All I know is what we do, which is reparative therapy. But you see, you can see why it's so political, because they just want to lump it into one group. So you have to understand that gay activists, as much as they oppose what we are doing, have no interest in understanding exactly what we do. Reparative therapy is nothing more than just good psychotherapy. Our theory is based on childhood trauma, which creates a fearful relationship toward other men, and that fear blocks the emotional attachment, which creates the environment for the sexual.
Can you give me the essence of reparative therapy? What are the key elements?
The key elements of reparative therapy is that a trauma occurred in which the boy feels inferior, not worthy of being connected to men. That came from father or brother or peers. As a result, he desires to be close to men, but he's afraid to be close to men. And that tension is resolved in fantasy through sex. That's That's the theory. A big part of the therapy is encourage our clients to make connection, emotional connection with straight men. And they're afraid to do so.
So what's the role of the parents in all of this? There's an idea that it's an absent father and an overbearing mother. What's your experience in that?
Gays, including official American Psychological Association, will say, oh, there are many, many reasons. We don't know what the reasons are. There's not many, many reasons. It's the same old story. Over-involved, intrusive mother, distant, detached father. Period. Period. Irving Bieber, who did the big study in 1962, over 100 homosexuals, said, after a career of working with homosexuals, said, I have never met a homosexual who had a loving, respectful relationship with his father. Period. I can say after 35 years, I have never met a homosexual who had a loving, respectful relationship with his father.
So those who claim they do, how do you cope with that?
Every time I give a conference, there's always someone that eventually raises his hand and he says, Dr. Nicolosi, I'm gay and I had a great relationship with my father. You're wrong. And I say to him, okay, tell me about your relationship with your father. And this is what they do. They go, well, it was great. It was really great. I said, well, tell me more. Well, when I told him I was gay, he was okay with it. I mean, that's the best they could do because the father doesn't care. That's why. Then I'll say, is there anybody else in the audience who had a great relationship with his father? One guy will stand up, heterosexual. I said, tell me about, oh, my father, we went hunting, we went fishing, we would joke around. See, you get a full story. With the gay, it's a defense. I had a great relationship, but there's nothing behind it. And you can see it very clearly.
Can you give us some perspective on why you were doing this work? What is it that motivates you professionally to have specialized in this way?
Well, I was doing therapy for quite a few years in private practice before I even thought about the problem of homosexuality. But I began to work with, since it was a Catholic clinic, I began to work with a number of Catholic men who were unhappy with their same-sex attraction. And I had absolutely no preparation for this at all. 10 years of clinical study, education, not one word on the cause of treatment of homosexuality. So I had no preparation. So I would just listen to these men and try to be supportive. But I began to hear a pattern. And the pattern was a deep resentment toward their mother. Even though they were very close to their mothers drove them crazy, frustrated them. And that they had a deep disappointment in their father who showed no particular interest in them. Then on top of that, there was bullying, an older brother who was, as Freud said, if a homosexual has an older brother, it's a feared hostile relationship. Again, I've never seen an exception to that. So I'm hearing this pattern, and now I become interested and I start reading some of the early literature that goes back to the 1950s and 1940s and 1930s. I'm reading Freud, and I'm reading Freud's daughter, Anna Freud, and she presented a paper in 1949, Healing 3 Homosexual Men, based on the reparative concept. Namely, these men came to realize that they were attracted to qualities of masculinity they did not possess themselves, and that their homosexuality was an attempt to make that connection. And they also had poor relationship with their father and over-involved. So I'm seeing the literature, all this buried, wonderful, insightful, psychoanalytic literature, which no one talks about. People are coming out of graduate school today, they have no idea. Oh, there's a gay gene and that's the end of it. So I'm seeing my clients talk about the same things that were written about 30, 40, 50 years ago. So I'm learning, I'm putting the pieces together. And then when I came across Moberly's book, she clinched it for me with the idea of defensive detachment. Because now it became not just a psychoanalytic concept, it became an attachment theory. So I was able to relate it in that manner.
So the therapists that have, or the branch of psychology or psychotherapy that I'm hearing has influenced you is Freud, the attachment theorists, Bowlby.
And neurobiology. See, neurobiology is also very important too, because that's the future. And that's what EMDR does. EMDR, by working on a subcortical level, talking about left brain, right brain communication, we're able to resolve the trauma. See, look at the way it all ties in. Moberly talked about detached defensiveness. Okay, what that is the result of trauma. So trauma theory explains defensive detachment. Now, she never talked about trauma. Okay, see, before trauma, we said, oh, the boy did not bond with the father. But it was more than not bonding. It was a traumatic not bonding. He did not bond, not because of unavailability, because the father was simply passive, but the boy experienced a hurtful rejection from the father. And that hurtful rejection from the father gets projected onto all other men. All other men, if they see me, will reject me. That's defensive detachment. On the neurobiological level, we have what they call sympathetic, parasympathetic. Parasympathetic, sympathetic is sympathetic is outgoing, connected, vital, alive. Parasympathetic is shut down, closed down, physically in the shame posture. So now we get the neurobiological equivalent of Moberly's defensive detachment. See, it all fits in beautifully. So we're working on the neurobiological level, basically.
I have a little understanding of psychodrama, but it seems to me that in psychodramatic theory, you can set up context, you can try things out, you can go past and present
Absolutely.
and future.
With psychodrama, is you're creating a drama situation, which is really a reliving of a trauma. And so in the trauma situation, the client is likely to withdraw from the feared object, whether it be the father or the bully or whatever. But in psychodrama, they're being prompted to engage that person. So you're setting up a whole new neurological network of assertion up against what was formerly feared.
What sort of numbers would approach you? How many clients would come in your direction?
I have treated many thousands, okay? We are running a clinic which is the largest clinic in the world. It's 135 ongoing cases each week. 135 ongoing cases each week, 7 therapists, and 99% of that client population is composed of young men who do not want to be homosexual. So we have a great opportunity to study this. And maybe that's why I have been able to refine our therapeutic interventions that are most effective. Because when you have when you have such a big base, you can practice different modalities.
Now, your clinic is in California.
It's in Encino, California.
How does that sit in the present political climate in terms of what the government does?
It doesn't matter because they're passing this law, which is poorly written, because we're not forcing anybody to change. I told you what we do. We do ask, we inquire, we offer interpretation, and we provide education. So how are we forcing anybody to change? I'm not worried about the law. Now, the only problem with the law is not in terms of the way it affects our therapy, but the law is creating an atmosphere of intimidation. That's the problem. I'll get a call from a father, which was recently. My son is 14 years old. He says he's gay, but we don't want to break the law. You see, that's exactly what gays want. They want parents to feel intimidated so as not to get help for their sons. They're breaking the law. The misunderstanding is that the law does not represent what we do. There is a law out there forbidding us to do something that we don't do anyway. How did this happen? It happened because gay activists have created a caricature of what they think reparative therapy is.
A person who wants to become a therapist and is interested in helping people who have unwanted feelings around the same sex, what is your advice to them today in the political climate that we face?
I would say don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Because what the law forbids is something we don't do anyway, number one. Number two, our therapeutic interventions are more effective than ever before. We're getting better results in a shorter period of time. We're beginning to document our change, and I think we have a great future.
The criticism is that those who want to study this outside your own professional circles can never find the individuals who have changed.
They're all over the place. More than ever before, ex-gays are coming forward and telling their stories. When I started this work 30 years ago, we couldn't find one person who would step forward and talk about their coming out of their homosexuality. Now we have websites, we have Voices of Change. You go Google that and you'll see face after face after face after of people just telling their stories.
Do you feel that you get a fair hearing from the media, from colleagues, from therapists within the professional bodies?
Surprisingly, I do get a fair hearing with my colleagues. So if I meet a psychologist and I tell them what I do, they're first like, what? And then I start to explain. And they get it. In 5 minutes, they go, oh, that makes sense. Fine, sure, no problem. So I don't have problems with my colleagues. I have problems with the professional association, not the membership, but the leadership, the policy makers at the top. They are the ones who want to marginalize us. They want to ignore us. They want to have nothing to do with us. Okay, and of course the media is a disaster.
So in terms of the future, what would you hope for?
It's more than hope. I'm beginning to see it. I'm beginning to see, there's a great attitude of intimidation. But I think that you can promote a lie just so long, okay? And the gays have promoted a lie. Look at what they said. The gay gene, there is no gay gene. 10% of the population, right? For 50 years, people have been told since Kinsey, 10% of the population, it's not 10%, it's 1.5 to 2%. There is no greater pathology. There is so much evidence on the greater self-defeating, self-destructive, maladaptive behaviors associated. Okay, you're born gay, you cannot change. Now the big one that we're attacking is change is not possible. Change is possible. So think about it. The 5 pillars of the gay movement are 5 lies. What does that tell you about its leadership? What does it tell you about the people? What does it tell you about the nature of the movement that is built on 5 lies? They lie. When I started doing this work many years ago, I sat down with Irving Bieber, who was a giant, and his wife, Toby Bieber, and I sat with them, and they said to me, Joe, they lie. And I said to myself, these poor people, they must be burnt out and tired. How can you say gay people lie? They lie. Because it's founded on a lie. Gay is an inauthentic identity. It's a make-believe identity. It's an identity that is a simple answer for a complicated psychological problem. That's why to be gay is to be anti-intellectual. You cannot inquire. The first thing of reparative therapy is what? We inquire. See, to keep the gay lie alive, you mustn't look at it. You must not look at you must not question it. Oh, I have a gay gene. I'm gay because I'm gay, because I'm gay, because I'm gay. And how dare you ask me? That's the end of the conversation. There is no dialogue. They refuse to engage us, because if they engage us, we're going to get into what is this phenomenon. And it's like an onion that you peel away until there's nothing left but the smell.
So what is your hope for the future?
My hope for the future is that we continue doing this work, that we begin to refine our therapy, we begin to get better results than ever before, and that we document our evidence that people can change, and that the possibility of change becomes once again acknowledged in the culture.
Have you ever felt that you are being silenced?
Yes, I feel like I'm being silenced by the media and by the professional higher the structure of the mental health profession. I can't get anything published. I can't get any acknowledgement. I'm psychoanalytically oriented. Okay, I cannot get a hearing in the psychoanalytic division of the American Psychological Association. I can get nothing published. I can get no forum, no workshop, nothing. See, their only way of dealing with me is to silence me. See, if they thought that they were right, then let's have a conversation. Let's talk. But they know that talk will lead to the exposure that they are covering a lie. APA, people think that the American Psychological Association is composed of these scientists who sit around and ask scientific questions and come up with scientific answers and then tell the public. No. The American Psychological Association is very much governed by special interest groups, and that dominates the policy making. The policy is not based in science. The policy is based on politics.
Give me specific examples of when you feel you've been silenced.
A very good example of the politicization of this subject is in 2009, the American Psychological Association wanted to release a study, an extensive study on the subject of homosexuality. And we submitted our names, those of us in North, myself, Yarhouse, Stanton Jones, Dean Bird. These are all big names who have done research in this area. We submitted our names. We were all rejected. Instead, the committee of 8, 7 of which were all gay. Not only were they gay, but they were gay activists. So, if it's 1% of the population and they're a scientific organization, you would think that it should be 1% of the task force report. Instead, it was 7 out of 8. That's just one example.